3-part series with Greg Care from Mallie Accounting and Advisors.
Our subject today is something families ask about during real estate planning, the difference between inheriting real estate, so a parent passes away or an aunt or an uncle or whatever, inheriting real estate versus being gifted real estate before somebody passes, right? Okay.
It's a big thing,
And what
yeah.
is best for them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and the answer is it depends.
I feel like you said that a lot today, Greg.
And it's true though, because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's wealth, their assets, their cost basis, everything's different. So that plays into a lot of this. But overall, I mean, we all understand the theory of a step up in basis. We know right now that there's a lifetime. Frank talked about this with you guys. A lifetime exclusion, about $13 million right now.
Right.
So in 2026, that's going to get cut in half. So it becomes a lot more important for individuals with taxable estates and making gifts now prior to 2026.
Okay.
But we won't get into all of that now.
Although I think it is important, that is going to come up on us
It is.
really quickly. So if you've been thinking about, if any of our viewers have been thinking about gifting their kids a shore house or something like that, right, to protect the interest on it, they should do it in the next couple of years.
Correct, and it depends if they're potentially in a taxable estate, because we're dealing with a lot higher tax rates than capital gains and step ups in basis right here.
Right.
So that is a whole nother nuance, because the answer, it depends. It depends on everyone's situation.
Right.
Yeah. We'll make the phone call before 2026.
Well, planning.
Yeah.
It comes back
Right.
to that meeting with your advisors every year and talking about the things that are going to be changing. So.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you both hear it a lot when you have a first-time home buyer. They don't have enough cash. They need money from a parent, and
Right.
they need it to be a gift, and everyone's worried, oh, well, am I going to pay tax on this?
Right.
And they need a letter in order,
That's right.
for the lenders to approve the loan. So
Yep.
the answer is you can give up to $17,000 per person per year. So if it's a married couple and husband and wife, you're 17,000 times 4 at that point that you
Okay.
can give away without having to file a gift tax return. So even if it's above that, there's no tax on it. It just eats into that 13 million annual or the lifetime exclusion.
Right.
And that someone would do that. Why? Why would someone do that?
To make a gift?
Yeah.
I mean, in that situation, they needed it for cash, but
Sure.
really gifting makes sense from estate planning. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Okay.
Whether it's federal estate planning or PA estate planning. And right now, if you're worth over, in 2026, over $6 million, you should start planning now.
Okay.
From a tax perspective, how often could I gift someone $17,000?
Every year.
Yeah.
And if you're not worried about your lifetime exclusion, you could gift, any amount up to 13 million right now.
Yeah. Well,
And being married, 26 million.
I'm available.
So, yeah.
If you'd like to give me 13 million.
I'll write
But-
you a
but
check
over-
Things
today.
I
Yeah.
need to do.
Overall, though, the decisions are, you get a step up in basis if you were to inherit it, versus if you gift it, you inherit the donor's basis. So I have a great example when you mentioned the shore home here. So the parents bought the property in the 70s for $300,000.
Right.
It's worth $4 million now.
Yep.
Sure.
So
Sits on the bay, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I don't know, but,
Views
but
and
it's
rooftop deck.
incredible. So if they gift it now and they're gifting it to their kids, they're trying to avoid PA inheritance tax. That's only 4.5%
Right.
on the value.
On $3 million.
Yeah, people really,
Correct.
really get worried about inheritance tax, and it's not as bad as people assume it is, right?
It's not for PA, like I
Yeah,
said, 4.5% if it's going to be inherited by a kid. When you're in a taxable estate, for federal purposes, it could be 40%. So
yeah,
that's where.
Right. I
Right.
think that's the part that people
Yeah,
always
for
get
sure.
really, try
Correct.
to avoid.
That's a lot.
So
Okay.
if you're trying to gift this now to avoid the 4.5%, you're really hurting the kids down the road, because if they want to sell the property, their basis is $300,000.
Right.
Right.
So if they were to just allow this property, so for instance, if they gifted it, the 4.5% on $4 million is $180,000 in PA, inheritance tax that they saved. Now, if the kids were to go around and sell it after they inherited it, they have a step up in basis to the $4 million.
Right.
So
Huge gap.
correct. So at capital gain rates with I use PA for example,
Sure.
and you're paying net investment income tax, you're at 26.8%. That's $992,000 in tax.
Wow.
And a
So-
lot of people ask if you could avoid that by putting something in a trust.
So putting it in a trust is really, if you're gifting it. You'd be gifting it now, and depending on the trust will depend on if they can get a step up in basis. So if it goes into an irrevocable trust, it's a gift at that basis. That trust inherits that basis.
Okay.
So that's a lot of planning, usually for PA inheritance tax purposes. But it could be for if you're in a taxable federal estate, you're still looking to get assets out of your name too.
Sure. So in that scenario, what's the advice?
It depends on their estate value.
Right.
So that
What else do they
depends.
have?
Let's just say they're married and they're under the 26 million right now.
Okay.
They would want to let the kids inherit it when they die, because
Instead of
Be
gifting
better.
them to it now.
it's a differential of $810,000 in tax.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
That's huge. And I really don't think people understand that very well. And I just don't know that there's a lot of people out there advising. I mean, of course, there's professionals out there, but I don't think everybody's telling everybody what to do, because there's a lot of CYA, right? I think in every industry, there's a lot of people going, well, I can't exactly tell you what you should do, but here are your options. And then you're still left, that's true, but you're still left with,
What do I do?
in this scenario, it's obvious,
Yeah.
but there are probably ones that are, the nuance is a smaller differential,
Right.
where it's hard for somebody to decide what is best for them. How do you help them then?
Yeah, I mean, you got to let everyone know their avenues and the pros and cons of each, and then hope that they can make the right decision.
Yeah.
But I always get the question of what would you do?
Right. If you had our $26 million, Greg, what would you do?
I do that though. I want to
Yeah.
know what my professional would say
Oh,
and
I
what
say it
they
all the
would do
time.
themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and I think again we appreciate that about you, and we appreciate that about Frank and Dave, and
And everyone communicating together, too. That's the biggest
Absolutely.
part.
yeah, I think so too. I mean, in that case, talking to their financial advisor and coordinating efforts and things like that, or their attorney if they're putting together a trust.
Yeah, and you start with your estate plan. You add up all your assets, you see what your potential exposure is, especially with knowing what could happen in 2026. And then from there, I mean, we're talking your retirement plans, your home values, your other investments, and
Right.
so around here it can add up pretty quick for individuals to get over that taxable threshold, where it's a higher level of planning, more than trying to get the step up in basis at that point is not as critical as removing assets from your estate.
Right. And I do think that, I think it's important for us to mention that we are talking about, not everybody has somebody, a property. First of all, not everybody has a second home.
Right.
Not everybody has a house that they're going to be able to gift their children. People a lot of times have purchased their homes as part of their retirement plan.
Yeah.
Selling that house becomes a part of their retirement plan, that they plan to sell that for the asset.
That's true
100%.
too.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, the most common scenario would be, a parent, that has their primary residence. They had it forever. It has a very low cost basis, and they're making a decision for estate planning. They're well under the threshold for federal estate taxes, and they go, all right, well, I got to make a decision here whether I want to gift it now or let my kids inherit it. So
Right.
that's the most common
Or
scenario
whether they
where
need that money to live on.
that's true.
If
Yeah.
they need to sell that house in order to buy, or to go into
Move into
retirement
assisted
communities or
living,
assisted
yeah.
living, right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. I think that makes, I want to just make the point that we work with everyone. We don't necessarily work with anybody that's just, at that $26 million.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even when you're under that, critical decisions, because the step up in basis is so much more important, depending on the spread than the PA inheritance tax.
Right.
Because we're talking capital gain rates versus, 4.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's so many questions, and there's some very simple answers, and then of course every other answer is it depends.
I know.
Yeah.
Right.
I have the luxury of saying that for
Yeah.
almost everything. Yeah.
But I think that's it brings us back to the thing that we've said in all three of these episodes is make the phone call, ask the questions. Feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to Greg. Obviously, we'll put his information in all the captions. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here.
Greg.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
all
Yeah,
of
we
your
really appreciate
advising
it.
and your information and expertise.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody.